We recognized that everything is on fire, and many of our colleagues ran to the roof, to the 5th floor. They stayed there and were evacuated by rescuers. While all this was happening, I thought there were no casualties. But later I saw one of my colleagues in the ambulance. His face was black, and somebody told me he breathed in smoke.
So the TV channel was accused of being an agent of Moscow. That exact message was spray-painted on the walls that surround its headquarters. Following the arson attack, the building was surrounded by protesters. They put up a metal fence and demanded that Inter stop broadcasting. The channel says the blockade ended thanks to the efforts of the police and security forces.
I don't like what happened very much, but I consider this the feedback from society over deliberately false and deliberately distorted content. In my opinion, the security service of Ukraine had to intervene in these deals a long time ago.
The attack has been condemned both by Europe and the US. The OSCE's media freedoms representative said that violence is never acceptable over disagreements with editorial policy. The US Embassy in Kiev called for a thorough investigation into the attack. Journalist Martin Summers believes that Ukraine's tolerance of the attack is an attempt to silence government critics.
I think the tolerance of the authorities for this attack suggests that they want to close down debate about the future of the country, and that's because they haven't really got any future to offer. The people in Ukraine are obviously suffering a great economic crisis. The government itself is in a crisis. It's not at all clear that they have any role in the European Union. Everything that's been promised is not going to take place.
Ukraine has banned more than 70 Russian channels in the last 2 years and imposed sanctions on more than a dozen Russian journalists. Human rights activists have been calling on Kiev to drop the measures, accusing it of cracking down on media freedoms. They've also raised the alarm over the killings of journalists in the country, including the death of opposition journalist Ales Buzina. He was shot dead near his house in Kiev. It happened right after the vicious murder of another opposition reporter, Sergei Sukopok. And most recently, renowned journalist Pavel Sheremet was killed in a car explosion in the Ukrainian capital. John Laughlin from the Institute of Democracy and Cooperations, which is based in Paris, says the media is intimidated in Ukraine.
There have been many attacks, both physical and legal, on journalists in Ukraine who are considered to be pro-Russian. The problem is that all this is the inevitable result of a climate of intimidation that is deliberately created by the government in Kiev, by President Poroshenko and by his ministers. According to this climate of intimidation, any dissent from the Kiev line, any dissent from the policies of the Kiev government, in particular, of course, the secessionists in the east, this is not the result, according to them, of an internal dispute in Ukraine among Ukrainian citizens, but instead only the result of Russian intervention, or Russian invasion as they call it. And President Poroshenko and the Chief of Staff of the Ukrainian army in recent days have been yet again cranking up their fantasies about a Russian invasion of Ukraine. And this, as I say, creates a climate of fear and a climate of hatred in Ukraine.